Ugh. I was just about to start this video for my dear friend Vanetta, who's a big supporter of the channel and who's one of the moderators in my lives Monday through Friday at 5. And the air raid sirens went off. So the war is not over, guys. We're deep in it. And I need Americans to remember that. Because Kevin McCarthy is a piece of shit who refused to meet with President Zelensky this week. Outrageous. Absolutely outrageous to snub one of our biggest allies because the MAGA caucus, the sedition caucus, says, oh, no more money for Ukraine because they're in Putin's pocket. Let's be honest, shall we? Ugh. Outrageous. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, my dear friend Vanetta asked if I could please talk about the money that we're sending to Ukraine. And on the surface of it, it does rather look like a lot. And the total commitment now is about $77 billion. Now, the very first thing to remember, right? So it's a big number. It's a big number. But the first thing to remember is that it's not like all at once, and it's not all cash. Far from it. Far. This is so important, guys. Far from it. It's not like there are C-130s with pallets of $100 bills landing in Kyiv. That's not a thing, okay? So the very first thing to think about is that these are long-term commitments. Some of this will not actually hit the DoD budget for as many as 5 years. So it's not $76 billion out of last year's taxes. It's $76 billion out of multi-year taxes. Now, if you look down here at the bottom there, about $5 billion of it is in grants and lend-lease. So, in fact, we get paid back on most of that. Part of the lend-lease program has a requirement that Ukraine pays the American taxpayer back for these investments. Okay. Then you see that next chunk there, 23.5, I think? I don't know. I refuse to get glasses, so I can't actually read the small print there. But let's call it 24 billion. Okay? Or no, let's call it 23 billion. Let's say it's 23 billion. So that's about a third of the all-up spending. With the other 5 billion, it's a little bit more. Now, here's the thing about that 23 billion right there. We didn't spend that money. That didn't come out of last year's budget. Those HIMARS that you hear so much about that the Ukrainians are so grateful for, and believe me, being here, I assure you, the Ukrainians are extraordinarily grateful for them. Those HIMARS, to the best of my knowledge, they were last retrofitted in 1993, if they were retrofitted at all. They've been in the garage, mothballed, for all this time. Those Abrams tanks that are supposed to be here, that we promised them, that, are in this big number of 23 billion, the 31 Abrams that we're supposed to send, that the Ukrainians still don't have. They've been in mothballs for 20 years. That's not even a joke. We have 1,700, well, we had 1,700. I'm not sure how many are there now. But we had 1,700 M1A1 Abrams in storage for 20 years. Those cluster munitions, couple $2 billion worth of cluster munitions, 3.5 million rounds of cluster munitions. We're not using them. We're never going to use them. Do you have any idea what it would cost the American taxpayer to decommission them, you're talking about a savings of tens of millions of dollars because we sent them to Ukraine instead of having to dispose of them. No joke. It didn't I mean, I know on the budget line, right, there's a line item for cluster munitions for Ukraine, right, $1 billion, yada, yada, yada. But it's bullshit. It's bullshit. They were paid for in 1988. Give me a break. We're saving tens of millions of dollars sending them here. It's not a joke. That's a fact. Please, I challenge you to correct me on that. What else? I'm trying to think. Now, the helicopters, those, what are they? I want to say 47s, something like that. If you depreciate the cost, because they're 30 years old, if you depreciate the cost over 30 years, okay, yeah, they cost us a couple bucks, but they're 30 years old. The Humvees, they're 20 years old. They saw service in Afghanistan and Iraq. They should be in that warehouse in Pennsylvania getting ready to be turned into blocks of recyclable steel, most of them. So it's a joke. It's a joke. A third of this budget, a third of it, is shit we had just cleaning out the garage for the Ukrainians. Please, give me a break. Now, look, all right, we're making new 155 millimeter shells. We had to borrow a bunch from the South Koreans. Okay, fine. There's some cost there moving forward. But for the most part, the weapons piece of this, a third of this, it's not really costing us anything. Same goes for that next section of the budget there. Oh, gosh, I cannot read that at all. Okay, security assistance, $18.3 billion. A lot of that is weapons that we took out of the garage. A good portion of that is just in training. Now, look, we got trainers, right? Like my buddy Travis, who trains Marines on his patented "make the bullet go where you want to" certification training. These are Americans who do training for our own military who are training the Ukrainians. We pay their salaries, we pay their billeting, we pay their food allowances. That's not a big deal. And then, of course, there's a lot of weapons in there that, again, cleaning out the garage. Now, that next piece there, the $26.4 billion, I think, in financial aid, that's real money. That's real money. It's not all out of this year's budget. I think, if I'm not mistaken, most of it gets broken out of this year's budget, next year's budget, and then about 15% of it out of the 2025 budget. And then finally, $4 billion in humanitarian aid. Are you telling me that the United States can't afford $4 billion to help these people? Don't tell me that. It's nonsense. And in terms of aid to Ukraine, we are hardly the biggest donor. We're the biggest military donor because nobody does war as well as the United States. That's fair to say. But if you look at EU institutions, they've given far more actual cash, just dollar value, far more actual cash. Now, if we take a look at these donations as a percentage of GDP, remember what Jesus said? Jesus said about the Pharisees that give out of their excess, but the woman who gives the 2 pennies out of her means has made a much greater sacrifice. So when we think about our giving as a percentage of GDP, the Norwegians blow us away. Hey, Lars, you guys are kicking ass, bro. We love you guys. The Norwegians are kicking ass. We're number 17 on the list. It's nothing for us. So please, everybody who's bitching about this, shut the fuck up and get out your wallet. United24.com.